calling all my fellow ladies who have felt the sting of a careless word, who know that true value lies in the story, not in the price tag. If you've ever had to remind someone that life isn't all about glitter and gold, then this story is for you. Subscribe to my channel and ring that notification bell, because what happens next will warm your heart and teach a lesson about true worth. The aroma of my famous lemon lavender shortbread was wafting through the house, a scent that usually brought me such profound joy. It was a scent of comfort, of memories, of a life well lived. But today it felt like a thin, fragile shield against the storm I knew was coming. The shortbread was for my granddaughter Lily, a small gesture of love on her wedding day. My hands, which had lovingly kneaded dough for decades, trembled just a little as I placed a finished cookie on the cooling rack, a quiet testament to the nervousness fluttering in my chest. My house, though modest, was filled with treasures, not of monetary value, but of memory. The worn Persian rug in the living room, a gift from my late husband, Arthur, on our 10th anniversary. The slightly faded armchair where I read countless books, and on the small mahogany side table, nestled in a velvet box, lay the very source of my anxiety, a small, unassuming locket. It wasn't flashy. The gold was soft and aged, and the single central stone, a diamond, was old-fashioned, its cut and clarity a far cry from the modern, sparkling jewels I saw in magazines. This locket was a gift from my grandmother, passed down to me with a story about my great-grandmother who wore it as a young bride. It was a tangible link to my past, a quiet whisper of my family's history. The doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent sound that shattered the peaceful morning. My second granddaughter, Maya, had arrived. Maya was bright, ambitious, and utterly obsessed with appearances. Her car, a sleek, expensive European model, practically purred in my driveway, a stark contrast to my humble, sensible sedan. She swept into the house in a cloud of designer perfume, her eyes, always so quick to judge, scanning every corner of my home. "Grandma, darling, you're still living in a museum?" she exclaimed, her voice dripping with a mix of exasperation and condescension. She barely gave me a hug, her focus already on the house. Her gaze landed on the velvet box, open on the table. "Oh, goodness," she said, picking up the locket with 2 fingers as if it were a forgotten piece of trash. "That old thing, a family heirloom, I presume? It looks like it's from the dinosaur age. The diamond is so dull, and the setting is practically falling apart. You're not actually going to wear this to Lily's wedding, are you? It's a black tie event. You'll be an embarrassment." Her words landed like cold stones in my heart. A deep, familiar sadness settled over me. It wasn't the first time she had been so cruel, but on a day meant for celebration, it stung more than usual. "This locket," I said, my voice quiet but firm, "was worn by my grandmother on her wedding day. It's more than a piece of jewelry, Maya. It's a story." She scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "A story doesn't get you a good table at the reception, Grandma. Look." She opened her purse and pulled out a large, glittering necklace, its stones catching the light and throwing a kaleidoscope of colors around the room. "I bought this for myself for the wedding. It's a modern replica of a famous piece. It's huge, it's flashy, and it screams, 'I have money.' This is what people expect to see at a high-end wedding, not some dusty relic from the past." She dangled the necklace in front of my face, its artificial sparkle mocking my quiet, genuine piece of history. The air was filled with the smell of cheap hairspray and her cloying perfume, a jarring contrast to the subtle, comforting scent of my shortbread. I watched her, this young woman who saw only surface value, and a cold certainty settled over me. She had no idea. Absolutely no idea of the true history of my locket, a history that was about to change everything. My locket wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a testament to a truth she had completely forgotten, a truth that was about to be revealed to everyone. The game, as they say, was afoot, and I, the supposed dusty relic, was holding the winning hand. The day, which had started with the sweet smell of shortbread, was about to become a tale of hidden secrets and surprising revelations, and the stage was set for a dramatic unveiling that neither of us would ever forget. The wedding ceremony was a lavish affair. The air in the reception hall was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive cologne, a sensory overload that felt miles away from the quiet comfort of my home. My hands, still feeling the faint tremor from my morning conversation with Maya, clasped the velvet box in my purse. I couldn't bring myself to wear the locket just yet. It felt too sacred, too personal to expose to the kind of judgments I knew were coming. I watched as the guests mingled, a sea of silk, satin, and glittering jewels. Lily, my sweet granddaughter, looked radiant in her dress, but my heart ached a little for her. She was a kind girl, but she was marrying into a world where appearances seemed to be everything. Her new in-laws, the Vanderbilts, were a picture of polished perfection, their laughter a little too loud, their smiles a little too practiced. As I took my seat at a table near the back, a waiter offered me a glass of champagne. The bubbles fizzed and tickled my nose, a brief, pleasant distraction from the anxiety that had been my companion all day. I took a sip, the cool, crisp liquid a welcome relief. Soon, my son, David, and his wife, Clara, joined me. They were kind, but their faces held that familiar, slightly pained look whenever Maya was around. They knew her brashness, and they always tried to smooth things over, but today seemed different. And then Maya appeared. She was a vision of modern glamour, her dress a vibrant emerald green that hugged her figure perfectly. But it was her neck that drew all the attention. The fake diamond necklace she had shown me earlier was magnificent in its size and sparkle. It caught the light from the chandeliers, casting tiny, fleeting rainbows across the tablecloth. She radiated a false confidence, a manufactured pride that was so unlike Lily's quiet happiness. "Grandma, I'm so glad you made it," she chirped, her voice loud enough for our entire table to hear. "I was worried you might get lost, with all the hustle and bustle." She winked at me, a cruel, knowing glint in her eye. My son David cleared his throat uncomfortably. "You look lovely, Maya," I said, my voice as neutral as I could make it. "The necklace is very impressive." She beamed, preening under the attention. "Isn't it? It's a real conversation starter, unlike some, relics." She glanced pointedly at my bare neck, a subtle but unmistakable jab. "I just couldn't bear to let you go without something to wear, so I brought you this." She reached into a small purse and pulled out a delicate silver chain with a small, unadorned stone. "It's a cubic zirconia, very fashionable, so much more current." She held it out to me, a gesture that was meant to look generous but was in fact a carefully calculated insult. The stone was cold to the touch, and the cheap metal felt flimsy in my hands. The air filled with the faint metallic scent of the costume jewelry. She was openly mocking my family history, my sentimentality, my very existence as a woman who valued things beyond their immediate, superficial worth. A hush fell over the table as people realized what was happening. Even the Vanderbilts, at the next table, turned their heads, their polite smiles turning into expressions of judgment and curiosity. The music, which moments ago had been a soft, gentle melody, now seemed to beat with a tense, dramatic rhythm. I felt a flush creep up my neck, not of shame, but of a quiet, simmering resolve. My son David was about to say something, but I put a hand on his arm, a silent signal for him to wait. The time for quiet indignation was over. It was time for a story, and this time it would be my story. The sweet smell of the flowers and the rich aroma of the gourmet food suddenly felt secondary. The air was now charged with an unspoken tension, a silent challenge that hung between me and my granddaughter. Little did she know, her thoughtful gift had just given me the perfect opening, the perfect stage for a revelation that was about to turn her world, and the world of everyone at this table, upside down. The climax was coming, and the final lesson would be far more valuable than any fake diamond. I gently took the small, unadorned silver chain from Maya's outstretched hand. The cold, lifeless cubic zirconia felt like a mockery of all the genuine love and history in the room. The smiles around our table were frozen, a mixture of embarrassment for Maya and pity for me. I could feel the heat of their gazes, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air. This was the moment. The stage was set, and the spotlight, whether she liked it or not, was about to be on her. "Thank you, Maya," I said, my voice soft and clear, cutting through the tense silence. "It's very kind of you. And you are right, of course. For a wedding such as this, one's jewelry should make a statement. But you see, my dear, you've completely misunderstood the statement I intended to make." I reached into my purse, my fingers finding the familiar, soft velvet of the small box. The tactile sensation of the fabric was a comforting anchor. I brought it out slowly and deliberately and placed it on the crisp white tablecloth. The click of the box as it opened was a small, precise sound that drew every eye. Inside, nestled on the satin lining, was the locket. It didn't sparkle like Maya's necklace. It wasn't flashy or modern, but its quiet dignity seemed to command the room's attention in a way that her imitation diamonds never could. "This locket," I began, my voice gaining a steady, resonant power, "was a wedding gift to my great-grandmother, a gift of love and hope on her special day." I held it up, letting the dim light of the chandeliers catch the single, modest diamond. "For generations it has been passed down to the women in our family, a symbol of true love and unwavering commitment. A promise of a life built on solid ground, not on fleeting trends or public opinion." I could see the shift in Maya's face. The smugness was starting to crack, replaced with a flicker of confusion. Her parents, David and Clara, looked on with a mixture of apprehension and dawning understanding. "And what a story it tells," I continued, looking directly at Maya. "You see, my dear, what you mistook for a dull and old diamond is in fact a rare and perfect rose-cut stone, a very particular cut from a very particular era." I took the locket and turned it over, revealing the back, and on the back, a very particular engraving. I held it up so everyone at the table, including the curious Vanderbilts, could see. It reads, "To my love, my light, a promise everlasting. 1895. A collective gasp, barely audible, rippled through the table. The music had stopped. The conversation in the entire hall seemed to have faded to a distant hum. Everyone was watching, their eyes glued to the locket. "This is not just an heirloom," I said, my voice dropping to a theatrical whisper that carried to every ear. "It is also a key. A very real, very tangible key to an inheritance that has been waiting for the right moment to be revealed." I unclasped the locket, and a small, delicate key, no bigger than my pinky nail, was revealed inside. Maya's jaw dropped. The confidence she had worn all evening vanished, replaced with a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. The gift she had so condescendingly offered me now lay forgotten on the table, its fake sparkle seeming pathetic in the face of this unexpected revelation. The air, which had been thick with the scent of lilies, now felt charged with a new, intoxicating smell, the smell of impending justice. This was no longer just a wedding reception. It was a courtroom, and the verdict was about to be delivered. The locket was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was a testament to the fact that some secrets are worth waiting a lifetime to reveal, and they had just given me the perfect stage to do so. The wedding might have been for Lily, but tonight's main event was about to begin.
The silence that followed my revelation was deafening, a thick, palpable pressure that seemed to squeeze the air from the room. Maya's face had gone ashen, her emerald dress suddenly looking like a cruel, vibrant joke. Her sparkling necklace, a moment ago so magnificent, now looked like what it was: a cheap imitation, a hollow shell. Her eyes darted from the locket to me, a desperate, cornered look in their depths. The scent of lilies seemed to curdle in the air. What is this, Grandma?" she stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. "What inheritance? What key?" I smiled, a slow, knowing smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "The inheritance, my dear, is a testament to the life my great-grandmother built, and the key, well, the key is the proof of a legacy that you, and frankly all of you, seem to have forgotten the meaning of. A legacy of true worth, not of material flash." Just then, my son David, who had been watching the scene unfold with a mixture of dread and growing fascination, finally spoke. "Mother, what are you talking about? A key? What's in the key?" I turned to him, my gaze steady. "A will, David. A very particular will. One that I have been holding for a very long time, waiting for the right moment to reveal it. And thanks to Maya, that moment has arrived." I took a deep breath, the air in my lungs filling with a sudden, exhilarating sense of purpose. I was no longer a frail, elderly woman at a fancy wedding. I was the keeper of a secret, the wielder of a truth that was about to change everything. My audience, now including the Vanderbilts, who were leaning forward with rapt attention, was completely captivated. "The key," I explained, holding up the tiny, intricate metal piece so everyone could see, was intended to be the final clue. A clue to a trust fund that has been growing for decades. A trust fund that was meant to go to the most deserving of my descendants. The one who understood that true worth is not found in superficial displays of wealth, but in the heart, in the character, in the quiet dignity of a life well lived. Maya's eyes widened, a flicker of raw, unadulterated greed replacing the panic. Her scent of her expensive perfume seemed to intensify, a suffocating cloud of false elegance. She began to speak, her voice now a desperate, fawning whisper. "Grandma, I always knew you were wise. I was just testing you. My necklace, it's a joke, a way to make a point. You know how I am, Grandma. I love you. I've always loved you." She launched into a pathetic, transparent attempt to backtrack, her words tumbling over each other in a desperate effort to salvage her position. The fake diamond on her neck seemed to mock her, a symbol of her hollow promises and shallow values. I simply watched her, my expression unwavering. "No, Maya," I said, a cold, surgical precision in my tone. "Your words this morning, your constant snide remarks, your desire to see me as nothing more than a dusty old relic, they were not a test. They were the truth. And in the face of that truth, I have made a decision." I reached back into my purse, but this time I pulled out a crisp, official-looking document. The rustle of the paper was the only sound in a room. I held it up, a final, unassailable piece of evidence. "The trust fund," I announced, my voice ringing with a quiet authority, has a specific clause. It is to be administered by the person who, in my judgment, has proven to be the most worthy, the one who has shown the most kindness, the most respect, and the most understanding of what this locket truly represents. The air was electric. My son David, his wife Clara, even the Vanderbilts were on the edge of their seats, their faces a mix of anticipation and awe. They all wanted to know who it was, who would be the heir to this magnificent hidden fortune. Little did they know, the verdict had already been decided, long before they even sat down to dinner. The moment had come for the final reveal, and this time, there would be no turning back.
The air crackled with anticipation. Every eye in the room, from my son David and his wife Clara to the high society Vanderbilts at the next table, was fixed on me and the legal document in my hand. Maya's face was a horrifying mosaic of fear, greed, and a desperate, clinging hope. The silence was so profound, I could hear the distant clink of silverware from a far-off table, the only sound that broke the spell. It was time for the final act. As I was saying, I began, my voice clear and steady. This trust fund, and the will it represents, is for a person who embodies the true meaning of this locket, the person who understands that a legacy isn't about monetary value, but about history, about heart, and about the promises we keep. And after this morning's incident, it has become perfectly clear who that person is not. I looked directly at Maya. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly agape. She was holding her breath, her entire being centered on my next words. You, Maya, I said, my voice dropping in pitch, you have spent this entire evening, and countless moments before it, proving that you see me as a burden, a relic, an embarrassment. You have judged me and my most cherished possessions not for their history or their value to me, but for their superficial appearance. You have publicly mocked the very symbol of my family's legacy, my locket, and tried to replace it with a glittering piece of plastic. Her face went from pale to a mottled crimson. The fake diamonds on her necklace seemed to shriek in silent protest. This trust fund, I hold up the legal document, is not for you. It never was. The will explicitly states that any descendant who has shown a consistent pattern of disrespect or has attempted to manipulate me will be disinherited. Your actions this evening and your countless snide remarks have been a public declaration of your true character, and they have cost you dearly. Maya let out a strangled cry, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and despair. She rose from her seat, her chair scraping loudly across the polished floor. You old woman! You're just doing this to punish me!" she shrieked, her voice high and shrill, echoing through the suddenly silent hall. "You're just a bitter, lonely old woman who wants to control everything." My son David, who had been sitting in stunned silence, finally found his voice. "Maya, that's enough," he said, his face a mixture of embarrassment and paternal concern. "Sit down." But it was too late. The damage was done, the truth was out. Maya, in her rage, had revealed her true self to everyone present, solidifying her own downfall. "On the contrary, Maya," I said, a wave of profound calm washing over me, "I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing this to teach you a lesson about respect, a lesson about kindness, a lesson that some things are more valuable than money, and some people are more deserving of love and respect than others." I then looked at my son David and his wife Clara, who were both watching in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of betrayal and a dawning, terrible understanding. The air now smelled of regret and humiliation, a bitter perfume that overpowered even the expensive food and flowers. The stage was set for the final, most satisfying part of the reveal. It was time to show them all who was truly deserving of the legacy. The time for quiet, heartfelt sentimentality was over. The time for justice had begun. The echoes of Maya's furious outburst still hung in the air, a final, shrill chord in the symphony of her public downfall. She stood there, frozen in a tableau of rage and humiliation, her carefully constructed facade completely shattered. My son, David, a look of profound shock and disappointment on his face, finally took her by the arm and, with a quiet word, led her away from the table. The crowd, a moment ago so eager for gossip, now watched in stunned silence, a dawning realization on their faces. "So," I said, my voice cutting through the lingering tension, "now that the theatrics are over, let us get to the true purpose of this will." I held the locket in my palm, its quiet gleam a stark contrast to the glittering chaos that had just unfolded. This locket, this key, was meant to be a symbol of a life well lived, and the legacy it represents is intended for someone who understands that. I looked at my other granddaughter, Lily, the radiant bride. She had been watching the scene with a mixture of sadness for her sister and a quiet, unassuming dignity. She was the picture of grace, even in the midst of her sister's embarrassing spectacle. "Lily," I said, a soft smile finally gracing my lips, "for your wedding, I have a special gift, one that I believe you and your new husband will truly appreciate. This locket, this symbol of our family's history, is yours." I walked over to her and, with trembling hands, placed the locket into her open palm. It is a reminder that true love is timeless, that a legacy is built on kindness and integrity, and that a promise kept is the most precious gift of all. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at the locket, not for its monetary value, but for the history and the love it represented. She clasped it tightly, a silent gesture of gratitude that spoke volumes. "And as for the trust fund," I announced, turning to face the rest of the room, my voice ringing with a new sense of purpose. "This trust fund, my dears, is not for any of my grandchildren, not in a personal sense. Instead, it is being used to establish a charitable foundation in the name of my great-grandmother, a foundation that will provide scholarships for young women who wish to pursue a career in the arts, just as she once dreamed of doing." A wave of murmurs swept through the room, a collective gasp of surprise and admiration. Even the Vanderbilts, who had been so focused on their own status, now looked at me with a newfound respect. "This is the true legacy," I concluded, a profound sense of peace settling over me. "It is not about accumulating wealth, but about using what we have to help others. It is about honoring the past by building a brighter future. And it is about teaching a lesson that some people, like Maya, so desperately needed to learn, that some things are priceless, and some things are simply cheap." The wedding reception, which had started as a symbol of new beginnings, had become a testament to the power of a quiet dignity and the triumph of a long-held secret. Maya was gone, her fake diamonds a distant memory. David and Clara, their faces a portrait of regret, finally seemed to understand the true value of what they had lost. And I, the old woman with the dusty locket, had not only honored my family's past, but had also secured its future. All with a single heartfelt act of love and justice. My story was over, but the legacy of the locket was just beginning.